Hello, everyone. Today we're having Richard Marsden with us again to follow up on the last episode about the GCC region. Today we're turning our spotlight on Saudi Arabia, once defined by its oil sector, but now undergoing a bold transformation into a global innovation hub. Under the ambitious Vision 2030 agenda, Saudi Arabia has poured millions, billions into infrastructure, technology, tourism, and more, creating a fertile environment for small and medium-sized enterprises from the West to thrive. Welcome, Richard. How are you doing today?
Moses, great to see you again. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you. We had a lot of good feedback about our last episode together, but a lot of people actually asked for more specifics about how to start a business in Saudi, why Saudi in particular. And I'll let you prepare the presentation. I would like you to run us through the presentation to learn more about the Saudi market and how to set up shop there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, just to set the scene, hopefully I'm not going to bore people with too much PowerPoint. These are really an aid memoir for people going off the call. There are some useful links in here as well that I hope will be beneficial to people. But again, as I made in the offer in the last podcast that we did, if people want to approach me directly to discuss anything, they're very welcome to. I'll pop my contact details this time at the end of the presentation. But really, I wanted to touch on four key things. As you indicated, people are now much more interested than the detail behind how do we do this.
Yep.
So I want to cover some of the Saudi basics, I've described it as, but hopefully this is quite informative as well in terms of what Saudi is, where Saudi is, what Saudi is, and some of the key projects there. Also then looking at company setup options, which again, I think was one of the bits of feedback that you received. I've made a distinction between generic company setup and the very specifics around the Ministry of Investment's multinational regional headquarters setup, because I think there is quite a significant distinction there. And one other topic that I think might be of interest is the Saudization program that applies to the quota of local nationals that need to be employed in a company as you go forward, as you establish yourself in the kingdom. So hopefully this is the right sort of content that people are looking for. And again, just for those who are not geographically aware, Saudi Arabia in the Middle East, middle for a reason, is very central to both Asia and Southeast Asia, obviously on the doorstep of Africa and within 6 or 7 hours of the UK, slightly less obviously to you and France, Moses, but yeah, within very easy reach of Europe as a whole. Obviously the United States is a bit of an anomaly, slightly further away, but again, not outside of the reach of most international markets. So I know this seems like a very basic slide, but it's important, I think, to show both the geography in terms of location, but also to give people a bit of a scale of the size of Saudi Arabia. You know, if you compare it size-wise to the UK, I think it's something like 8 times bigger geographically, maybe slightly smaller actually. But you know, a significant landmass, certainly the biggest country in the region, both by population and by size, dwarfs the United Arab Emirates. So I think it's just important to give a degree of context, because everybody talks about Dubai, and I think we mentioned this the last time, as being, you know, a very Western friendly place to go and do business. But Dubai is also a city-state. It's relatively small in the grand scheme of things. The population, I think we touched on as well last time, is about the same number of people, about 1.2 million. Saudi Arabia has that many people working in its government infrastructure. So again, just to give a degree of scale, there are about 35 million people in Saudi. There are about 10 if you include all the 10 or 11 roughly, if you include all the expatriates across all of the Emirates, not just Dubai. Abu Dhabi obviously is the political, the Emirates, but you also have Sharjah, Al Kuwait, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, and the others in there as well. Geographically, that's where it is. Size-wise, that's what it is. But I think more importantly for people, what's going on there is probably one of the key topics. Everybody's hearing about NEOM. I wonder how many people could point to it on a map. So I thought it might be useful just to geographically place some of the giga projects onto a map of Saudi so that people get an idea of the regions, but also get an idea of where some of these key projects are located. So NEOM, as we can see, is in the top left corner here in a district called Tabuk. So this obviously borders Jordan. We go across the Red Sea, you obviously have Egypt on the other side. Al Ula, which is a major tourist destination. This is where a lot of the um, Napataean ruins are. So if you imagine Petra, where they carved out the building into the rocks, made famous in Transformers and James Bond, I think. And they have very similar ruins in Al Ula. So again, as a geographical location, that's in the northwest of the country. Red Sea Global clearly goes all the way down the Red Sea, but the major developments are taking place in the Tabuk region as well. So this is very.
Excuse me, Richard. So Red Sea Global, is that, is it a company? Is it a region that is considered? Because I've heard it in both capacities. I heard it as a company, but also as a region. People saying, I'm going to the Red Sea.
Yeah. So the Red Sea on the west, Saudi Arabia, obviously then across the other side, you have Egypt, is the route that a lot of the shipping traffic takes to go up through the Suez Canal, which clearly would be at the very, very top of this map. So this is one of the reasons, if you look at NEOM and break NEOM into distinct projects, you have Trojena, which is the skiing destination that they're putting together for the Winter World Cup that's coming up. You also have Oxagon, which is effectively Rotterdam on the sea, a digitized logistics hub, which is strategically placed because of all that Red Sea traffic, all that Suez Canal traffic that's going up through that region. So yeah, the entire coastline, if you imagine coming down the side here, is not bordering anything other than an expanse of water called the Red Sea. So yeah.
Thank you.
But Red Sea Global is, as you say, it's kind of synonymously used by both by people in the description of its location, but also it is a company. So Red Sea Global, headed by John Pagano, is arguably one of the biggest success stories in Saudi right now, because it's delivering physical infrastructure, delivering hotels, it's delivering, ironically, it's delivering hotels embedded into the rocks in the mountains in Tabuk. So beautiful locations, some stunning architectural projects taking place and taking some scale. So John, quite rightly, is very proud of what he's achieved, and has obviously spoken quite widely about the amazing work that they're doing in transforming the area. So yes, Red Sea Global is a company, but it also describes the location clearly of where most of the work is taking to develop these tourist destinations.
It's mainly a resort. It's a tourist resort.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Industry like other regions, it's mainly dedicated to tourism on the Red Sea.
Very much so. I think it'll be interesting. We touched briefly on alcohol in the previous podcast. I think as well as seeing relaxation of the legislation in the diplomatic quarter at Riyadh, I think if we're going to see any relaxation of the alcohol laws, it may well be in Red Sea first, but I think that's still a little while away for the reasons that we discussed previously. It's just a very to address there locally at the moment. Then you have a lot of residential and retail projects. So Jeddah Central is very much how do we change Jeddah into becoming more of another tourist destination, another Red Sea Global type Dubai hospitality and tourist destination. So again, on the sea, probably best known at the moment for the Formula One race that takes place there on the Corniche. It's a beautiful city and it is on the coastline. So again, very much like Dubai, it has that humidity, being coastally based. But it is very much seen as the sort of tourist destination. Red Sea destinations are the places that people will most likely come. The reason being, if you consider on the eastern region, places like Dammam, this is obviously where it then borders with Qatar and Bahrain. That's very much the oil production side of things. It may be possible to develop some of those Gulf locations. So there are industrial cities on the coastline there. But Jeddah's very much the sort of more bohemian, artistic, Dubai-style location that I think people are likely to want to travel to. It's also the major destination for pilgrimage traffic coming into Mecca and Medina, and you can see those two districts on the map.
Just to clarify, Richard, can you also use the pointer, please, when you're talking about the different
sorry.
areas? So Makkah is the region and Jeddah is a city.
Jeddah is a city within the Mecca region.
Yeah.
And it's typically the major airport that people will fly into. So yeah, if we consider this as Jeddah, and obviously Jeddah Airport within it, people will then come there. They will then have onward travel. Oops, sorry. They will then have onward travel to Mecca, Holy cities. So a lot of pilgrimage traffic comes through Jeddah. But yes, they're going to try and, I think, develop Jeddah into more of a Dubai style location.
Cosmopolitan city.
And it already has that sort of vibe to it anyway. People will see a difference. If they travel to Riyadh, it's all business. It's very much as a business hub, a little bit like London. You wouldn't come there with with your speedos. You would do that in Jeddah. You would go there to relax on the Corniche and have a nice time and, relax by the beach.
Right.
I think this is quite an important distinction. So Riyadh, very much the business district at the moment, and obviously Jeddah, very much the sort of holiday destination that will be developed over time.
And Riyadh is the capital of the country as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's almost given away by the sheer number of that are taking place and being developed in Riyadh. So if you look now at the sort of middle of the screen where Riyadh is, I've shown Qiddiya to the left of Riyadh. It is still within the Riyadh district, clearly.
What is Qiddiya?
I was just about to explain. Thank you. So
It's such a great master class. Like I have so many questions. So with the expert.
Feel free. And obviously people are very welcome to kind of Google and get much more accurate and informative information than I'm going to give. Qiddiya is going to become a major entertainment district on the outskirts. It's about 45 minutes out of the center of Riyadh, permitting. But it's in development at the moment, and this will be a major entertainment theme park. So there'll be roller coasters, there'll be rides. They're also developing a new Formula One racetrack. So Formula One will hopefully have a home in Qiddiya in about 2 or 3 years' time, in addition to its location on the Corniche in Jeddah, where it is today. So Qiddiya, amazing entertainment districts. They're carving into the rocks above the location where all of this is going to be built. The plans for the racetrack at the moment, some of the Formula One race drivers have already commented on how spectacular this looks as a racetrack. So I can't wait to see that one opening. But then within Riyadh center itself, within Riyadh as a city, you have major projects taking place. Up here in the top right is one of the biggest residential, but also retail development companies within the PIF portfolio. So they're developing huge amounts of real estate in and around Riyadh as we speak.
Let's explain to what PIF is the organization.
Of course, great question. Sorry. Yeah. I always make these assumptions. He's definitely making an ass out of me. The PIF is the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. And for people who are not aware of the size and scale of it, I think it tripped over $1 trillion of assets under management quite recently. It is a powerhouse bank account basically for Saudi Arabia. This is the sovereign wealth fund that pays for all of these giga projects. Obviously receives a huge amount of its money inward investment coming in from Aramco, the company.
Yep.
And distributes that wealth into all of the giga projects to develop the kingdom.
Yeah, so, I think it stands for Public Investment Fund.
Public Investment Fund, correct.
Exactly. And I've also heard from reliable sources that a lot of the people who are in charge are young, well-educated. They went to the best schools around the world. So if you're an international company or a business person, it would be easy for you to establish contact with them. That's what I heard. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd certainly agree in terms of the education. I think a lot of people over there speak better English than I do. They went to some of the very, very best schools in America, in the UK. What you'll also find is quite a few, and you're absolutely right, in terms of the age of the population is a very, very young population. A lot of very capable, very well-educated people, PhDs in a wide range of topics, but particularly in sort of finance and business within PIF.
Yeah.
But again, within those individual disciplines within PIF, so where they're looking at projects like Seven, which is the Saudi Entertainment Ventures, Seven from the name. These guys are looking at a lot of entertainment projects around Riyadh, so they're developing things like the Central Park that's being there, the King Salman Park. These are all being developed under Seven. They're bringing New Maraba, which again has been in the press recently. This an enormous square structure, huge infrastructure projects. They're developing that within that district as well. So, PIF is investing into individual sectors and bringing in expertise in those individual sectors. So within Riyadh Air, for example, and I haven't shown that on here, but a new airline established within Riyadh. Saudiya is headquartered in Jeddah, but obviously operates as the national airline of the kingdom. Riyadh Air coming in is being headed up by Tony Douglas at a CEO level. And Tony Douglas, as you may or may not know, is formerly from Etihad in Abu Dhabi. So has a great deal of international experience in, creating a new airline. In his case, Etihad, competing against Emirates, collaborating with Emirates to bring more people into the Emirates.
Now he's a new regional success, Saudi. So left the UAE, went to Saudi as the up and coming star in the region.
I think he could read the tea leaves that this is the next big thing happening, right? So, yeah, who wouldn't want to be part of that with all of the resources, all of the ambition that MBS is bringing, the Crown Prince is bringing to the kingdom, and instilling within the population in the kingdom. You go there it's absolutely infectious. You talk to people, the ambition, the growth, the potential. It's difficult not to get carried along on that wave. And we'll get very quickly into, how do you establish a presence there, and, how easy, how difficult, what structure. I think that's quite important as well. But the point I was going to make about PIF is they're bringing in specialists like Tony Douglas in the aviation. They're bringing in specialists in a range of different sectors, whether that's entertainment, sports, medicine, healthcare, you name it, across all of these different disciplines and the different companies that we're showing on here, or the different giga projects. You can imagine that they're bringing in specialists in many, many areas that perhaps they don't have the experience that the Saudi young population needs. Sorry, the other way around. They have the experience that the Saudi population currently lack. So they're coming in to nurture and mentor, but with a view to nurturing that Saudi talent. And again, I think there's a component that we need to discuss later on Saudization, which is the quota that certain companies need to have of Saudi nationals within them.
Depending on the sector, I guess.
To comply with regulation. And again, that's sector dependent. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Let's continue looking at the projects on the map.
Yeah. We'll be very familiar with the development of hopefully of the airport, the airline. We've met Saudi Downtown, Seven, Roshan, and Sports Boulevard are really looking at, how do we get people there? How do we get people when they come there to stay? Where do they stay? Yeah. So there are many, many more projects than these, but these capture the sort of main ones. People will have heard of NEOM, they'll have heard of Red Sea. Hopefully they'll have heard of things like Qiddiya as an entertainment district with Seven. And these obviously work very closely with the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of, actually it's not so much on Ministry of Entertainment, it's the General Entertainment Authority, which is headed by Turki Al Sheikh. And he is a larger than life Mr. Entertainment type character in the kingdom.
So it sounds like we have three major booming sectors. We have tourism, entertainment, and sports. So that presents many opportunities for international companies wanting to go to Saudi.
I would say within all of these, there are multi-faceted disciplines underneath as well. Ready Global, you could classify as hospitality, but right now it's about construction. It's about building these amazing hotels, these amazing destinations, these experiences. But then you need to train people in hospitality to come in and provide the same sort of service. And this is the interesting bit with Dubai, to provide the same quality of service that people have come to expect and enjoy in Dubai. the service culture there is second to none, right?
Yeah.
And Saudi is going to have to provide that as well. And they haven't had the exposure to tourists up until now. So this is quite a new learning experience for them.
And it's on a bigger scale as well. Let's not forget, this is a huge country. So there's big need for in many places.
I mean, you could arguably draw the comparison between Dubai as a city-state and either, Red Sea Global in Tabuk or Jeddah. They would be similar. But when you consider this as a country with multiple cities, multiple existing industrial activities taking place, and then all of these new projects overlaid over the top of it, yeah, there's opportunities in construction, compliance, regulation, finance, admin, you name it, right across the board. So many opportunities, which begs the question, how do we set a company up over there and who do we work with? So we touched on PIF. I should have perhaps put some of these key players at the beginning. But yeah, PIF, Public Investment Fund, is the sovereign wealth fund. You then get into different disciplinary regulators, depending on what industry, what discipline you're in. The Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority has an element within it called NDMO, the National Data Management Office. That, for the tech companies, which was my background, for tech companies, this is where you play first. You need to ensure that if you're bringing in technology to the kingdom, if that's a SaaS platform and it's outside of the kingdom, you're going to have data sovereignty and data residency issues. But this is where you would need to go and engage to try and overcome those. And possibly from an operational perspective, and we said we'd get into operational detail, this is where you might need to get an exception letter to allow companies, or those companies would need to apply for it, to be able to use your technology. And typically the only way that they would get that is by giving a commitment that you will come and install that SaaS application in the kingdom at a point in the very near future.
Yeah.
So I had this in my previous company, and this is the process through.
Yeah. So Saudi, they want to make sure that data is in safe hands, is inside the country, not outside, and they have control over it.
Yeah, and if anyone's aware of GDPR, the section legislation here in Europe, the similar legislation in the region, particularly in the kingdom, is called PDPL, Personal Data Protection Legislation. Very, very similar to GDPR. It's based on the principles of GDPR. One of the key extensions or differences to it is that your data remains private even when you pass.
Oh,
unlike in Europe. There are other differences, but those are the sort of main distinctions. Plus, I'm not a data regulation expert. But yeah, Sadaya and NDMO are the place that you will go and play if you're a tech company. If you can install on-prem, you can install in a local SaaS environment with Google or Alibaba or AWS in the next year or so. That's absolutely fun. And a lot of AWS hosted companies, the ISPs that sit on AWS, are finding that they can now get an exception for people to use their platform, because AWS will have a data center in place later this year, which means that there's then an environment for people to deploy into in 2026 and beyond. So tech companies, your enemy, your best friend, is to go and play with Sadaya. Financial services or fintech companies will have a combination of the Saudi Central Bank, SAMA, and the Capital Market Authority, depending on where they sit. But actually, in all cases, you'll also engage with the National Cybersecurity Authority. So this would sit alongside the data regulator to ensure the security of data, not just the residency of data. So again, there's different places that you'll have to go and play. Depending on sector, MISA kind of covers all sectors. So the Ministry of Investments will help you with, depending on who you are and what you are as an organization. If you're a massive multinational, they'll work with you on, certain tax breaks perhaps, or certain ways of coming into the country. But it's also these organizations, these ministries, that you'll have to engage with in healthcare, for example, Ministry of Health. If you're doing something in tourism and hospitality, the Ministry of Tourism and the Saudi Tourism Authority. If you're bringing in foodstuffs, if you're bringing in new products into the country, they don't grow everything themselves, and they don't rear everything themselves at the moment.
Question?
You'd have to deal with.
So what was MISA again?
Ministry of Investment into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the organization that's probably the one that you'll see most in missions. So when you see the Saudi trade missions going overseas, it'll often be the Ministry of Investment that leads that, that's championing that cause. And lots of people specializing in helping to bring people into the country and helping them to establish themselves in the country. We'll come to two of the main ways of establishing yourself in a minute. But there are multiple other, ministries, Ministry of Energy. So if you're coming in like Rolls-Royce are doing with these small modular reactors, it's clearly the Ministry of Energy and others that you would engage with, environment, water, and agriculture. If you're bringing in new desalination technologies, for example, you may also work with the Ministry of Communications and IT, and underneath them, the Communications, Space and Technology Commission. So there are government ministries, and then there are the sort of enforcement entities that you work with underneath them to deploy solutions in country. And if you're an aviation freak or an airline looking to come in, obviously there's the General Authority of Civil Aviation as well. It's not by any means an exhaustive list. It's really just to give you a flavor of, there are multiple entities out there that you need to engage with. And at the moment, I would say there may be some slightly competing or conflicting entities. Why would you go to the central bank as opposed to the Capital Market Authority? And where does Saudi fintech play into all of this? There are multiple entities that you may need to engage with before you really work out how you come in.
I can totally see them merging in the near future as they try to optimize their processes.
Yeah. I think there will be a lot of consolidation. I mean, there's 600 plus government entities at the moment. That makes it very difficult for people to understand, how do I come into the region? And that probably leads on quite nicely, if we're okay with this. And that leads on quite nicely into, okay, how do I set
MISA? Yeah.
So MISA is where you get your license. This is how you set your company up. In the UK, this would be Companies House. But in Saudi Arabia, it's the Ministry of Investment. Saudi Arabia, that it is where you go to establish your company. You get a MISA license. Now, I put a subheading on here of choose wisely and get expert advice. I'm going to preface this slide with, I do not help people to set their companies up. What I help people to do is to establish a presence physically, to establish a presence in kingdom. How do they go into the kingdom and start working and start making introductions and getting into the right places? The logistics of setting the company up, I work very, very closely with Astro Labs. There are other companies available. I have to make that disclaimer. But Astro Labs, I've found, are one of the biggest and most professional organizations to help this right across the GCC, not just in Saudi. But their process is indicated on here. Get your license in just 30 days. In the UK, you can do this within about 30 seconds. But, there is a process, there is a time scale. And as they indicate on their site, you can be fully operational in less than 3 months. There is complexity. There are steps that you have to go through. And if I go back to the choose wisely piece, the reason I say that is, yes, you can. And they've indicated here a model of setting up your license with 100% ownership. That's fine. A lot of companies will want to do that for obvious reasons. They want full control. But I would argue this is not dissimilar to the way that Dubai was 20, 30 years ago. You needed a sponsor. And in that time, in that place, you had to surrender 51% of your company. Now, that didn't mean that you were giving them 51% of the profits. You could negotiate deals on the side to that. But as a sponsor, they had to have 51% of the company. And I remember meeting a gentleman from Apple, Reg, who arrived in Dubai many years ago when I was working there. And he came into my office. He was being shown around the sort of office infrastructure within the internet city. And I remember meeting him, and he said, I'm from Apple. I'm not going to do a French accent. That'll insult you. But he came into the office, introduced himself, and said, I'm from Apple. We're here to establish shops in the Emirates. And so, who's your sponsor?
Yeah.
To which he replied, oh, no, we don't need a sponsor. We're Apple. We're big. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's fine. I think you might find that you. And I saw him about 6 months later. There was a little coffee shop in the middle of the DIC. And I saw him there about 6 months later. I said, sir, how's it going? He went, yeah, you were right. We had to find a sponsor. That they were working with a retail sponsor who then put them as a franchise. into one of the stores in one of the shopping malls in Dubai. It's only more recently that they've established their own shops directly. But the point of the story is that it's all worth having a sponsor, or it's definitely worth having a sponsor if they give you access to the right people, the right markets, and the right opportunities. So I would choose wisely in terms of structure and in terms of the sponsor that you work with, because if somebody can really help to boost your business, MISA has a slightly different approach. A local partnership model is 25% for the local sponsor, not 51. So it's much more palatable. And I would argue, and I'm happy to conversation with anyone, having 75% of something that is being boosted by a good local sponsor is better than having 100% of nothing.
Then nobody knows.
100%, yeah, or 100% of a smaller company that nobody's going to hear about.
Yeah.
Or at least not the right people are going to hear
Yeah.
about. That's the key. Choose wisely in terms of your structure and choose wisely in terms of your sponsor. Make sure that they can really help you get access to the projects and the contracts that you want to get access to.
Yeah, so it sounds like having a local sponsor gives you more credibility and access to the local market, to Saudi market, right?
It should. That's choose wisely comes in. Yes, that's what you're
Why
looking for. That's
the
what you're
right
looking
sponsor.
for. The right sponsor. Yeah, absolutely. So there are ways of doing it. You can have a JV, you can have a partnership engagement. That ideally you're working with a local company or you're working with a local sponsor that gives you access. That's fantastic, and it gives you access to the market knowledge and contracts much more expeditiously than perhaps you if you first go in alone, 100% ownership, and try and break the market. I think that makes it quite difficult. A branch office, another easy way of, a small to medium company perhaps opening a presence there. So if you have a branch in London, or you have a headquarters in London, this is slightly different to an MNC, and I'll come on to that in a minute, multinational company. The foreign owned entity, as I say, I think a lot of people will think, let's have 100% ownership, 100% control. I would just question if that's really the best option for you. If you have a brand that people are aware of, yes, you might want to do that. If you don't, if you're, Richard Marsden knows who you are, that obviously is not perhaps the best option. You may want somebody locally with the right connections to help give it a boost. But yeah, there are other options available. These are the sort of four main ones that I think people would like to perhaps consider. I've put the Astra link at the bottom so people can go and research. There is a much broader detail of the approach on the website, and obviously their contact details. Alternatively, I know the team there very well. I'm happy to make an introduction. If you want to have a conversation about how to set up, I'm very happy to have that conversation and then make an introduction to Astra Labs for you. But yeah, feel free if you want to approach them directly. But if you look at the process steps that they've outlined, obtaining the license, then managing the permits for visas for employees, liaising with all the local authorities. You need to have a presence, finding offices, issuing the general manager's visas, and then getting into setting up bank accounts and all the logistics. They'll help you with that. That's the sort of administrative side of things that they deal with. Quite frankly, that would bore me, but I know it's necessary. So I leave it to the specialists. Leave it to the specialists to do. But yeah, they're very, very good at what they do.
Just a quick question.
Yes,
on the
please.
slide, under branch office, you've written operate directly. What do you mean by directly? Like, does it have, is it easier, is it branch office than to establish a totally new company?
Arguably at the moment, I would say.
I just heard that.
It is slightly quicker to do because typically what you would have to do, and again, please don't quote me exactly on this.
Yeah, okay, you're not there.
If you take a copy of your certificate of incorporation to your local embassy or consulate, show that established. Depending on the sector, somewhere between 1 and 3 years of audited accounts.
Yeah.
Those need to be kind of notarized effectively or apostilled by the embassy, or potentially by your local chamber. So it may be that you have an Arab British Chamber of Commerce. Go through that process with them. They will then pass it on to the embassy to effectively rubber stamp at the end. And it is literally stamped.
Yeah.
Once you have that documentation, then it's much easier to go to MISA and say, look, we're all cleared. We've been, sort of pre-approved, if you like. So yes, it is a little bit quicker. Yeah.
Thank you.
And There's complexity in all of these processes, but it's slightly easier as a branch office.
Thank
Now, speaking of complexity.
Oh my God.
So I'm not going to read through all of this. Don't panic. This is really there as an aid memoir for people. The acronyms that I throw around: MISA, again, Ministry of Investment, Saudi Arabia; RHQ, Regional Headquarters Office; and MNC is multinational companies. So I worked for a very large American technology company, and this is the program that they're going to have to go through to establish an office in Kingdom. So this is really designed very, very specifically for multinational companies, MNCs, to establish them in Kingdom. So this would be the likes of Goldman Sachs, who've now said that they're going to do this. This would be Alibaba Cloud. So there's a dedicated team that work with those big multinational behemoths to help them set up, because they have slightly different regulation. This is now mandated, by the way. So in order to get access to those big, juicy government contracts, you need to have an RHQ in Kingdom.
You probably have to move from Abu Dhabi to Saudi, right? Like I can see this competition because, right, they're trying to.
So this is the really interesting bit.
Yeah.
This is the regional HQ. Now, I need to be quite careful how I.
Well, I think you could have 2 regional HQs, I guess.
This is the thing. You can have offices in region, but your regional headquarters needs to be deemed as Saudi.
Which is, yeah.
But they recognize, to be fair, MISA themselves recognize it's a region, and you will have people flying outside of Saudi Arabia and spending time outside the country in order to service clients in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Doha, and elsewhere in the region. So they're not expecting you to be, in the kingdom 24/7, in that regional headquarters. It is a regional HQ, and people will travel outside.
Right.
Probably going to leave that statement there. You can read between the lines what that means.
Yeah.
But yes, this is mandated. So as of January the 1st last year, you need to have a regional HQ in order for you to bid for big government contracts. So the likes of Atkins and others for those big construction projects, established offices in the kingdom for that very reason. Microsoft have been there for years. They're a key part of the government infrastructure from a tech and communications perspective. So all of these have really benefited from going in early, getting access early to those contracts, working closely with those procurement teams, building that trust and relationship, as we discussed in the last call. So yeah, there are benefits to doing it. There are some dictated, mandated things that you have to do as well. But
On this note, Richard, would you say that it's still early for businesses to go there? But like still, like we're not too late entering the country?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think as we wrapped on the last call, I would absolutely say to people, Saudi is ambitious, it's very capable, but it's at this sort of beginning of a journey that Dubai has not completed, but it's certainly 20, maybe 30 years ahead of Saudi at the moment.
So it's going now. It's like going to Dubai 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
And the
great.
companies that did that 20, 30 years ago, the companies that did that 20, 30 years ago are reaping big rewards. They're well established, they're proven, they're trusted. New entrants coming into the market in the Emirates now are finding that the market's well saturated. There are big established players that they're trying to compete against. They have local presence, they can speak local language, they understand the culture. They've been present for decades and built that rapport and trust and relationship. Now is absolutely the time to go. If you're even thinking about it, just get your bum on a plane and go. Seriously. There's no time like the present to get over there. There is a desire and an ambition to grow every facet of the country. You saw that on some of the projects at the beginning. This is absolutely the time to go. You snooze, you lose. Simple as that. If you're not on the flight and you're not in front of people within the next few weeks, you've got the big tech conference in a few weeks' time in Riyadh. If you're a tech company, fintech, health tech, whatever, if you're not there, you're nowhere. You've got to be there, and seriously, get yourself over there, spend time with people, network the heck out of that event. and make sure that you're getting access to the right people.
Yeah. Speed is important. Get in touch with Richard Marsden or with me, and you'll take them, help them the way to make the right moves.
We'll handhold them all the way through the process.
Yeah.
But, get a toe in the water, get your socks off, get that toe in the water, get over there and start making those moves. Because if you don't, your competition will. You look at a lot of the big data center companies, they panicked a little bit because Alibaba Cloud came over there en masse and established 2 Cat C data centers and started taking business away from the Americans. And then suddenly the Americans were like, oh, okay, yeah, we need to come. And AWS committed, and it was a bit more complex than that. But AWS committed, and now they're established in the kingdom. So don't wait. You need to be down there. Yeah, absolutely. The support and incentives, again, there's the usual thing. They try and simplify licensing and give tax breaks to big MNCs because they want them there as well. But this is the carrot to the stick of the mandate. The mandate is you need to be here to have access to the contracts, but if you commit to coming, we'll try and make it as easy for you as possible. So yeah, there's a dedicated team that will work with them. They'll typically work with the sort of government relations team within the MNC to get them set up. And they'll help with this piece, the local Saudi talent piece that I've highlighted in here. Yeah, again, different program to the sort of traditional way of setting the company up that Astrolabs can help with. An MNC, I would typically say, should go direct to MISA. And there's usually a MISA representative in an embassy in country. So the gentleman here in the UK, I know very well, it covers the sort of Northern Europe territory. So he's covering everything, from sort of UK up through the Scandinavian countries and parts of Europe as well. So there's typically somebody within an embassy or a consulate close to you, or you can go direct to MISA in Kingdom as well. So yeah, there's a slightly different program there. And we touched on Saudi talent and Saudization. So let's dive into that in a little bit more detail. So this is not dissimilar to the Emirates. So you have Saudization, you have to employ a certain number of people, depending on your company, depending on the size of it, depending on the sector, you have different targets and different numbers that you need to achieve. This is very, very similar to the Emirates. They have Emiratization. You need to have similarly, need to have a quota of locals employed within your company to achieve those government set targets. So don't worry, again, I'm not going to go through the slide in absolute detail. This is really just to give people an indication of what it is. The fact that it exists, you need to consider this. So again, if you're setting up a company, you need to accept that you're going to have to employ a certain number of local national. They may have the academic experience. We talked before about the youth element of the society, but they may not have massive amounts of experience. So again, you may need to put additional training in place. But again, there is a very heavily monitored, this is a very heavily monitored program. So companies will have to adhere to it. They'll have to be compliant with it, and they'll have to demonstrate that compliance.
We have to highlight this fact, heavily monitored. So don't mess with it. Don't try to be sneaky. Just make sure you meet the quotas.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, it's described as the program.
Yeah.
And again, there is down here on the regulation and the procedures, this link in the deck. And what I'll do, Moses, is I'll give you this deck as well. So people who coach you, you're very welcome to share it. I've put these hopefully useful links in there for a reason. They're very welcome to go and do their own research and to understand more about this in detail. Plus, as I say, I don't want to read all of this out. It's just there as a key thing that I think people need to understand in terms of the basics of establishment of a company. But also, why does it matter?
Exactly.
So part of it is cultural integration. Bringing locals into the company gives you more of an understanding of the region. You bring the right people in, they have the right contacts, the right connections, they can help you with, with business growth.
And the right understanding of your market as well. Like if you have
Absolutely
locals working there, it will help you improve your product, tailor it to the local needs and expectations.
How many times in the company that they have today do you hear, oh, my cousin works there, or my best man, or guy that I play golf with works there? Whatever the connection is, those people know other people. So, if you nurture that talent, you have access to more and more. And yeah, clearly they can give you a better understanding of the culture of the region. Is Jeddah different to Riyadh, to Tabuk, to the eastern provinces and Dammam? That's the local cultural benefit that you get from people through. It is strategically aligned with Vision 2030. This is a key component part of Vision 2030 defined by the government, by the Crown Prince, is how do we create new jobs? How do we create diversification of industry away from oil and gas? This aligns perfectly with that. So this is a key component part of it. The regulatory compliance, as we said before, is heavily monitored. And as much as there are incentives for you to employ locals, there are also penalties if you don't. So, there's the carrot and the stick on both sides.
Let's not forget that Saudi is not the only country that's doing this. Here in Europe, many
No,
countries actually, it's very hard to import foreign workers. It takes
yeah.
forever, and sometimes to issue a visa, it's super hard. So,
And let's not get into the topic of Brexit and EU and free movement. That's a whole other podcast. But
and in USA, they're having this debate about the H1 visa or something like, bringing in developers and stuff from India and other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's that sort of nationalistic approach that a lot of governments are taking, I think is very much in alignment with this. It's we've got local people for local jobs. That's something that we hear all across the world. Made in the USA is, make USA great again. That whole mega approach in the United States is something I think we're going to hear a lot more of in a week's time when Trump comes in.
Yeah.
So really just summarizing this, I think there is a requirement for you to employ locals. There's not that. You just need to be aware of the impact that could have on your business. You might think I'm just going to deploy a small tactical team of specialists from Europe or the US to go and establish an office there. But you do need to bring local talent through that process with you as well. So it's just
and train them and
absolutely.
Yeah.
I made that observation down here. Companies may need to invest in training programs to upskill Saudi employees.
Yeah.
The experience that they've had in particular roles there, or if they're straight from university, the knowledge that they bring may not be exactly what you need them to have. So I would actually say this about everyone. I've found this in my own career that particularly in sales recently, there's an expectation that you're going to join the company and you know everything that you need to know. We'll teach you the products, but you need to know how to sell.
Yeah.
We've stopped doing sales training. I went through spin selling with Neil Rackham. I've gone through fox hunting, major account selling, solution selling. I've gone through all those programs in the early part of my career, which was a long time ago. But I don't see that we're doing that now. So I would actually extend this beyond training those Saudi employees coming into the company. That I think we need to do this more broadly within an organization anyway. It's not enough just to train people on our products or our service. We need to train them on the basics of the job that they do. You should always be learning, always improving.
Yeah, and I think training is very important because this links to the vision to 2030, because you really vision there is a big focus on capacity building and human development and especially for Saudis. So it's an integral component of way all businesses need to invest in training Saudi locals,
And what a
especially
fantastic opportunity for training companies.
Yeah.
They're already doing this. Go over there and provide that capability to those local employees, provide that capability to these European or Asian companies coming into the region, bring that language capability, bring that product and service capability, bring that training capability. So I think every time we discuss what Saudi's doing and where Saudi's going, there's a business opportunity in there. And I don't know who's listening to this and who's considering the move, but there will be other people listening to what we're discussing thinking, I can see an opportunity that you haven't highlighted. Let's go do that. And that's fantastic. If it just, germinates that opportunity and encourages them to go, fantastic. That's entirely the point of this. So hopefully that was useful. I'm going to finish just by popping my contact details up. If people want a free 30-minute consultation directly with me, they're welcome to. But hopefully that covered the projects, where Saudi is geographically, but the projects within Saudi, the whole region, how to set the company up. If you're a multinational, the process that you need to go through, and how Saudization everyone that's coming into the kingdom. But hopefully that was useful today.
Thank you so much. This was a great masterclass. By far, this is the best presentation I've seen in English about doing business in Saudi. Thank you so much.